Hey everyone! So last night I was browsing the Jehovah's Witnesses website, as you do on a Sunday night, right? It's perfectly normal. And I found this little post titled, "Should I Believe in Evolution?" And I thought it would make a really interesting video and something for us to talk about and discuss today, because it's really strange because they actually make some really excellent points in the post. And then they also jump to some really terrible conclusions and make some really absurd claims. So it's a really weird mix of like good and really, really terrible. So I figured it would make an interesting little one for us to talk about. It's a very basic little article, but like I say, raises some interesting little questions and discussion points. I've not really touched on the subject of Jehovah's Witnesses before on this channel, but I have had quite a few Jehovah's Witness friends in the past, especially at sixth form. There were quite a few people who were absolutely lovely, absolutely wonderful people who came from Jehovah's Witness families. I once, back when I was like still doing photography stuff for a bit of extra money on the side, and I once photographed a Jehovah's Witness wedding, things like that. So I've never really looked too much into their specific teachings really before these last few weeks, but I have seen the effects that the religion has had on people that I know and people that I care about. I've seen really smart, intelligent people who haven't been allowed to go to uni. I've seen people who weren't allowed to have certain friends. I've seen people who felt the need to constantly lie to their parents and sneak around behind their backs. I've seen one girl's family who literally threatened to kick her out and disown her if she... I think basically the rules were you can only go to uni, but only if it's this one particular uni, you live at home with us, and you study this topic that we want you to study. Anything other than that, and she was gone, basically. I've seen families encouraging or pushing marriage on kids as soon as they hit 18, when they barely turned 18. And I've seen the hurt and the trouble it can cause. But that said, I've also seen people who seem pretty happy with their lives now, sticking with the religion and stuff. So, what do I really know? Some people seem happy, some people seem unhappy, and who am I to judge? It's not my life. But anyway, what do I know about that? What I do know about is kind of a little bit evolution. So today we're going to be looking at this one tiny example of stuff that they teach to teenagers, and just, let's jump into it. I feel like my earrings are dangling too much. Hang on, I'm going to take them out. I don't know about you guys, but all I can hear is jingle, 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 so it must be kind of like hell to you having it right near the microphone. There we go, that'll do. So they open up this article with why it matters, and it reads, "If evolution is true, life has no lasting purpose. If creation is true, we can find satisfying answers to questions about life and the future." Now, you all know that I disagree with this first statement, right? It's something that I've kind of spoken about quite a lot before. If evolution is true, then the purpose of life is just to create more life. It's to replicate, to pass on your genetic information to the next generation. The purpose is to continue life. That's kind of all there is to it. But on a more personal note, you can make your own purpose in life whatever you want it to be. It can be, to be happy. It can be to cause mayhem. It can be to have fun, to have children, to protect the planet, and to get rich if you want. It can be whatever you want. If we don't have a creator, and this is the one life that we have, then surely it's up to us to decide what we want our purpose to be. And that's not to say there's no consequences of that decision. There definitely is. It's just the consequence isn't going to heaven or hell. The consequences are kind of more social and they're more now. It's just a kind of personal thing, but I do feel like if everyone lived their life thinking that this was their one and only chance and that, they had to make the best of it, I think the world would be a much better place than if it was just full of people, trying to make the most out of the next life, the afterlife, I think sometimes people put too much emphasis on doing things for the afterlife, and they don't live in the here and now and enjoy the moments now, and I do think that they miss out, and I think that's sad, but it's just a personal little view. I don't know, all this aside, why do we even need a lasting purpose anyway? People can be happy, content, productive, whatever without one. This article, nothing that I found ever really addresses this idea of why we need a lasting purpose. And honestly, I don't think we do. Can't just being here be reason enough? I don't know. Anyway, on to the second point. As for these, satisfying answers to questions about life and the future, if creation is true, I'm not sure that's the case. I mean, if creation is true, all that means is that we have a creator. If the universe, the earth, people have a creator, I'm still left with a hell of a lot of other questions. It doesn't really answer a lot. Can at least move more questions than before. What about the specifics of how and why and when we got here? Who is this creator? Where did he come from? When did he arrive? And just having a creator doesn't actually give us any answers about our purpose either. It just says, we have a creator. The fact that this microphone was made by someone doesn't tell us anything about its purpose of recording sound. It just tells us some guy made it, or probably some machine made it, And it for sure doesn't tell us anything about an afterlife. It just tells us that, there was a creator who made this planet and put us on it. That doesn't actually say anything about heaven or hell or afterlives or whatever, does it really? I don't know. If I'm honest, the theory of evolution and the evidence we have for it provides a lot more answers and fills in a lot more gaps for me than just God did it. Next up in the article, they offer a what would you do scenario. And I actually quite like this bit. This is quite interesting, give us a listen. So it says, imagine this scenario. Alex is confused. He's always believed in God and in creation, but today his biology teacher forcefully claimed that evolution is a fact that is based on credible scientific research. Alex doesn't want to appear foolish. After all, he says to himself, if scientists have proved evolution to be true, who am I to question them? If you were Alex, would you accept evolution just because the textbooks presented it as fact? Excellent little point. It does actually go on and says, people on both sides of the debate are often quick to state what they believe without really knowing why they believe it. Some people believe in creation simply because that's what they've been taught at church. Some people believe in evolution simply because that's what they've been taught at school. And you're right. In this scenario, Alex shouldn't just believe whatever's put in front of him in a book. He should ask questions. He should ask for the evidence. He should say, how did we come to this theory? Who decided this theory was legitimate? What evidence do we have to support this? And what evidence do we have against it? He should evaluate all the evidence and decide for himself. Just reading something in a book, while useful, isn't ever really enough for you to know it's completely legit. I mean, hell, just look at the books by the Pearls. They somehow got published and they're full of crap. What I think is very important to note in this scenario, though, in regards to little Alex here, is that if he is struggling with something, if he is, if he doesn't understand evolution, if he doesn't understand the evidence that's presented to him, that doesn't just mean it's not true. If the evidence is confusing or unclear, he should go to someone who is knowledgeable on the subject, a biology teacher, for example, and ask them to explain it to him and say, what does this mean? I don't get it. And there's nothing wrong with asking, but just because you don't get something at first, that doesn't just mean it's not true. I personally believe that once someone understands what evolution actually is, understands how it works, even just understands how cells work and basic biology and stuff like that, I think it's impossible to not see that the most likely mechanism for explaining how life on Earth got to where it is today is evolution. I think it's impossible to not come to that conclusion. But that's just me, I don't know. So yeah, strangely enough, I really like what they're saying here about not just believing something because you're told it or because you've read it. I really like that. I just come to a very different conclusion to them as a result. And sorry, Kyra's drinking really noisily in the next room. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's quite funny. Bless her. It's so warm today. Next up, they try and bring the Bible into it, as they do, obviously. Why wouldn't they? They're religious. But they say, the Bible says every house is constructed by someone, but the one who constructed all things is God. Is that reasonable to believe? The big issue I have with this is that they're conflating two very separate, very different ideas here. Yes, every house is constructed by someone or some people, because it's a man-made object, a man-made thing. It's not naturally occurring. It's not comparable to living things. A house isn't comparable to a shell. You know what I mean? They're both places to live, they're both homes, but one occurs naturally, one is designed and built by someone. They're very, very different. You wouldn't say, well, actually, these guys probably would, but a rational, normal, logical person wouldn't say that a shell is designed by a shellfish, you know what I mean? I don't know, I'm rambling here. But you know, it's just, a house isn't comparable to living things, you know? Not every seed is planted by someone, not every plant is watered by someone, not every living thing needs someone to actively, consciously make it or help it grow, you know? That's why a house is very different to a plant, an animal, a seed, a shell, you know. And so moving on to the second point of this idea here, right, about the one who constructed all things is God. That really has nothing to do with the first point, and there's really no evidence for it. Like, so it's not reasonable to believe, not even a little bit. Next is the bit that really, really does annoy me, though. They give these, like, claims and then questions based on the claims, right? So they say, claim, everything in the universe came as a result of a random Big Bang. No, I'm no expert in, like, the Big Bang and physics and that sort of thing. That's not, like, my area. But I'm pretty sure the whole idea of, like, a Big Bang starting the universe is more of, like, a hypothesis or a suggestion, or, like, it's like our kind of best, not guess, but, like, our best theory so far. It's not really, like, a claim of this definitely 100% irrefutably happened. And I'm not sure anyone's ever really claimed that it was a random Big Bang. I think we don't really know the cause or the reason for it, or even if it had a cause or a reason. So I don't like this claim that they're making. I think the claim would be more of something along the lines of, you know, scientists' best theory of how the universe came into existence is via the Big Bang. I think that's the claim you can make, not this. So now the questions that they ask based on that theory, they shouldn't really count because, you know, they're based on rubbish, but we'll look at them anyway. So the first question is, who or what caused the Big Bang? And we don't know, and it's okay to say that we don't know. We don't need to fill in that gap in our knowledge with God must have done it. That's unnecessary, and it is unhelpful. The second question is, which makes more sense? That everything came from nothing, or that everything came from someone? It's not really an either or though, is it? And I know it's a bit of a cliched response, but in the second scenario, it just leads to the question of, well, where did that someone come from? Surely that someone must have come from nothing or nowhere at some point. So I guess the real question is, like, which makes more sense? The universe came into existence via a Big Bang, the cause of which we're not sure of, or the universe was created by a god, which no one really knows what it is or where it came from or if it exists at all, and maybe that god came from nothing, or maybe it came from something, or maybe it's always existed, or maybe it came into existence at some point. We don't really know. But yeah, no, this is a totally plausible scenario, right? The next claim they posit is that humans evolved from animals. No, the claim is humans are animals. Which we are. There's no two ways about it. I literally did a whole video on this. Hey, baby. Hi. Come on. Yes, good girl. Well done. Oh, Kyra. I don't know if you can see her. She's sat on my lap. You're a little bit small, aren't you, girl? You're a little bit short. So yeah, again, basically, you can probably hear her snuffling, sorry. Basically what I'm trying to say is that, again, screw these next questions because they're based on a false claim of saying humans evolved from animals. We didn't. We are animals. There's no two ways about that. There's no denying that. It's just how things are. But anyway, screw these questions, but we'll try and answer them anyway. So, hi, baby, you little grumble. Sorry, she makes piggy noises. So, question 3 is, if humans evolved from animals, from apes, for example, why is there such a huge gap between the intellectual abilities of humans and those of apes? I swear this is written by someone who doesn't even know what evolution is. You're smarter than this, aren't you, girl? Mwah. You too. Right up my nose. Love you, baby. So, I'll say this again. Humans are animals. The ape thing, though, is where things get a little bit complicated, because I'm always useless with, like, trying to get all this taxonomy stuff right, and, like, you know, this species and genus and me. Like, and I know whatever I say, I'm gonna get it wrong, and someone's gonna correct me and be like, oh, well, actually, apes are, and this includes this group and this group, and I'm useless with that sort of stuff, so I'm not even gonna try. I'm gonna skip over that bit a little bit and just say, just say this, which does answer his last point, right? The question is aimed at asking, why are we so much smarter than, chimpanzees, for example, and monkeys and so on that we see today? And the answer is kind of really simple when you think about it. So we share a common ancestor with chimpanzees, right? I think this is a pretty straightforward thing that a lot of people who deny evolution, I think they just kind of miss for some reason. But imagine it like we share a great and a few more greats granddad, like way back, alright? And way back up there, our family tree splits off, and down the line, we end up here as humans, and they end up here as chimpanzees, and we end up different species just because the different kind of family lines have undergone different changes. And this is happening over a big, long, crazy long period of time, right? The chimpanzees we see today are probably smarter than that common ancestor, and it just so happens that we got smarter quicker than the chimpanzees got smarter. So today, humans are smarter than chimpanzees in a lot of ways, in some ways. Probably not all ways, actually. I think there are quite a few theories as to why this is, but one particular one that I read about involved how our ancestors... So think of it like kind of being after the family tree splits a bit, and our ancestors, who... kind of like very distant cousins of the chimpanzees' ancestors, right? They changed up their diet in some way, and that led to a rapid increase in our brain size over the next few generations. Some people say this is because we started eating fish, some people suggest it's because we learned how to cook meat, and so on, but the point is, our family line as humans just got a few more lucky breaks than the chimpanzees' family line. We got smarter quicker, we got larger brains quicker, our brains developed quicker, and our intelligence just built up over a long period of time. That's all there is to it, really. Today's chimpanzees, like I say, are probably still a lot smarter than our shared ancestor, but they do have a lot of similarities to us. But for their survival, they probably found they didn't need a lot of the intelligent features that we have, such as speech or, whatever. So, their selection pressures just focused on other traits that they had. And, in a lot of ways, they beat us out. They're smarter, they can climb better, they're, more useful with their feet, they have other things. You know what I mean? So basically I'm just saying our family lines had different selection pressures and we ended up different. That's all there is to it. Sorry, I'm still distracted from little Kyra, bless her. The next question is, why are even the most basic forms of life so incredibly complex? And I'm not entirely sure what they mean by this question. Are they referring to just like single-celled organisms? And if so, what exactly is like the point of the question? The answer is just, each organism is pretty much just as complex as they need to be to fulfill their function and survive, right? And they're constantly changing and adapting. We all are. Everything is. Maybe the point they're trying to get at with this question is some kind of like, ooh, they're too complicated to have formed by themselves kind of thing. But it turns out we do actually have a lot of evidence for like abiogenesis and how even like the simple single-celled organisms could have like come about in the first place. There's been a hell of a lot of experiments and we've actually managed to replicate like a lot of the steps towards how simple life forms may have begun to form. It's really, really interesting stuff. We actually know a lot more than I realised we did. And Thomas led a really, really interesting episode of the Here and How podcast on this, if you want to go check it out. Again, I'll link that in the description below as well, because it's really, really, like, fun and interesting and worth a listen to. And basically, it's just, like, an hour of me getting my mind blown. Stephen as well, actually. So, if you want to check it out, it's interesting stuff, and I really recommend that. And it kind of answers this question, if that's what they were trying to get at, which I think it is. The next claim they bring in is evolution is a proven fact. Again, kind of like false claim-ish, kind of. No one really says it's like a 100% irrefutable proven fact as such, but it kind of might as well be, sort of, in a way. So the evidence we have that supports the theory of evolution is so overwhelming that the theory of evolution is the best explanation we have so far, and no other theory fits better. No other theory, has as much evidence supporting it. That's the claim. The claim is that evolution is our best theory so far. And if we find other evidence that contradicts it, we'll happily change the theory. But so far, no one has. No one's provided that evidence that stands up to scrutiny, that disproves evolution. Okay, so now the questions. Has the person making this claim investigated the evidence for himself? Like I say, no one is making the claim that evolution is a proven fact, but yeah, there's a hell of a lot of evidence for evolution. And if you bother to look at it, or even just understand what evolution is, then yeah, it's all there, and it all stacks up, and it all, lives up to scrutiny. It's good. And I think most people making the claims that evolution is very, very likely is our best explanation, that evolution is, a good solid theory. I think most people, yeah, they have looked at the evidence for themselves. Maybe. Most people who talk about it like I do anyway. Anyway, next question is, and the last question, how many people believe in evolution simply because they have been told that all intelligent people believe in it? And, surprising one to end on here, but I actually like this question. Yeah, I'm a big kind of believer and advocate for don't just believe in stuff because you were told that others believe in it, or that others agree with it. And don't just like something because it's popular. Don't just go along with something because everyone else says it's true. Learn about it for yourself and take the time to make your own choices. I think that's great advice. That said, there are cases where having a majority of people who trust something, that is useful. For example, if a lot of knowledgeable scientists look at the evidence for evolution and say, yep, this stands up, this is good, solid stuff, and, they're reliable scientists, they're knowledgeable scientists, they're trustworthy, then why shouldn't we listen to them, Point is, I actually like this question, I just come to a very different kind of conclusion and outcome to the point that they were trying to make. Then they try and use this as an example of why evolution is so silly, and it's quotes from Jehovah's Witnesses who, are talking about this stuff. And this one says, imagine that someone told you that there was an explosion at a printing plant and that the ink splattered onto the walls and ceilings and formed the text of an unabridged dictionary. Would you believe it? No, I wouldn't. And that's not even close to what evolution is, so that's a terrible analogy if that's what you're trying to do. It's more like, imagine a monkey sitting at a typewriter. I love this one, right? Okay. But no, imagine you have a little monkey. He's sitting at a typewriter, bashing away at keys, right? And you have someone who's kind of reviewing his work and looking over it. And every time he manages to bash out a real word, he gets a little treat. He starts writing out a little bit more, bashing away at the keys, and he kind of notices that pattern of whenever he puts that little, selection of key bashers together, he gets a treat. So he starts doing that more often, and he starts writing that word more often, and then there's more of those and more of those. So he starts repeating these real words more often. Over time, he starts combining these words with other words, and he gets a bigger treat. Then he starts putting these actual phrases and sentences together, and he gets an even bigger treat. When they're grammatically correct, he gets an even bigger treat. And when he starts reverting back to nonsense and just bashing at the keys, he gets a little punishment, Soon the people reviewing his work start to notice that there's actually meaning to what he's putting on this paper. They see there's poetry, there's stories, there's messages, and he gets an even bigger reward, so he starts repeating this even more. Of course the monkey doesn't understand anything he's typing. He personally has no message he's trying to get across. He's just trying to get treats, and he recognizes these patterns of when I push these buttons together, I get a treat. And when I push these buttons together, I get a punishment. And when I push these buttons together, I get the biggest reward. That's all the monkey knows. Of course, sometimes when he's trying to repeat the good patterns, he'll make a few mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes can help him get a bigger reward, and sometimes he gets punished for them. In this little analogy, the monkey is the part of the cell that replicates the DNA, right? The keys on the typewriter are the little bases in a DNA strand, right? And sometimes they come together to form genes. and genes can be expressed in different ways, and they can mean different things to us. For example, they might mean we'd have brown hair or blonde hair or no hair. The little cells are there making the DNA strands. They don't understand these meanings. They just know whether, they don't understand these expressions. They just know that this little sequence is either good, because it means their survival, or bad, because it means they die. So they replicate the patterns that are keeping them alive, and they don't replicate the bad patterns because then they're dead. Am I making sense? So basically, their analogy was a bunch of poop, and my analogy was better because it had monkeys. Or something. I just like that whole monkeys writing Shakespeare thing, Good thing to think about. Never mind. Just move on from my little monkey business. Now they finally go on and they make another great point, surprisingly enough. And they say the Bible encourages you to use your power of reason. That's not the great point. That means your belief in God should not be based merely on emotion, such as I feel there may be a higher power, the influence of others. I live in a religious community. That's not what I've seen in the Jehovah's Witness community, but whatever. Or pressure. My parents raised me to believe in God. I had no choice. Again, not what I've seen in JWs, but whatever. Instead, you should have reasons for your belief. And they're right. Always try and have reasons for your big beliefs and, the big things you support and you live by in life. Definitely have reasons for them. Great. And then they ruin everything they just said with this story. When I'm in class listening to the teacher explain how our bodies function, there's no doubt in my mind that God exists. Each part of the body has its own function, down to the smallest detail, and these functions are often carried out without our awareness. The human body is truly mind-boggling. You're kinda right there, Teresa. Human body's pretty amazing. And things do have functions, mostly. But that isn't proof of a creator, I'm afraid. Sorry. If it is supposedly proof of a creator, then how would you explain body parts that are poorly functioning or inefficient or just ineffective? Like, think about the the laryngeal nerve in giraffes, the super long one that's just really inefficient. Or, the appendix in humans, which might have had a use once, but now it just spends more time getting infected and inflamed and causing us pain than actually being useful. If you really kind of consider the functioning of each and every organ and cell and organelle in your body and take the time to think about how they may have evolved over millions of years, I think often it makes perfect sense. If you take the human eyeball, which is a favourite of religious people who want to try and debunk evolution, right? Don't just think of the eye as being this perfectly functioning thing. Think of each individual part coming together over millions and billions, whatever, of years. First, it's just this little bundle of cells that can kind of detect the difference between light and dark. Then it adapts, and soon it can detect movement and tones, and then colour, and then a lens forms, so you can start to see little details. And then muscles are added that can pull and push the lens, so you can alter where you're focusing and see these long distances. When you think about it like that, and it building up slowly and slowly, it doesn't have to be this perfect thing in the beginning. It's perfectly plausible that it evolved over millions of years and wasn't always just this eyeball that we know and use today, that's where I want to end this video today. I just thought it was a interesting little article. I know it's a very simple one, a very basic one, but I thought it was interesting how they do make some really good points, and then they make such a big, making such a big deal of encouraging people to think for themselves and educate themselves and evaluate evidence and so on. That's really good stuff. And then they also spread this entirely, false information about evolution. And it's just a really weird mix of stuff. And I do find it a little bit weird. Do you think it's deliberate? Or do you think it was just written by someone who was ill-informed about evolution? Do you think they're purposely trying to be deceiving, where they're, trying to come across as, being really reasonable and, yeah, we want you to think for yourselves? And then they're being really deceptive by including information that they know is false. I don't know, do you think it's deceptive or ignorant, is basically my question. I don't know. And either way, what do you think about something like this with such incorrect information being presented as a learning resource for teenagers? let me know your opinions on that. Also, if you'd like to do more touching on just Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff in general, please let me know. I really like getting feedback from you guys. And let me know just if you have any other kind of like requests or video ideas that you'd like me to do in the future. But yeah, I had fun with this. I know this is a little bit of a long one, as always. I'm terrible. I don't know how to keep things short. I just ramble too much, like right now. I'm sorry. But anyway, if you have made it through this far, thank you so much for watching today. I really, really appreciate you guys. And hopefully, I'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching today. If you enjoyed this, you can check out more from me at the Here and How podcast, a weekly science podcast I host with Rationality Rules and Holy Kool-Aid. In the meantime, you should know I have merch available now, and it's awesome if you want to go check it out. But for now, a huge thank you goes out to everyone supporting me on Patreon this month. You guys are awesome! Seriously, a huge thank you especially goes to Gambit and his Chauffeur, Deshauwn, Mark Dauner, Eric Reed, Christian Berg, Rachel B. Royer, Jadeon Sheppard, Jaylee Moore, Religion is BS, Sir Michael Moore, Matthew Meinema, Tate D, Gibbs, Greg Ladd, and Pizelated Skeptic. Plus, check out everyone else who is mentioned here on this end screen and down in the description below. I love you guys so much.